Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
Have you ever read a headline for a news story and thought this has to be satire? And then you realize that no, it's not. It is not satire. Life is not a parody of itself. Well, maybe life is a parody of itself, but there are some things that are all too real. And one of those things is what I'm going to share with you now. The headline comes from Reason.com. Boston men beat immigrant in Trump's name. Donald Trump responds that his supporters are, quote, unquote, very passionate. Last Wednesday, two brothers in Boston, Scott and Stephen Leader, allegedly beat a homeless Hispanic man outside of a public transit stop. The Boston Globe reports the 58-year-old victim suffered a broken nose and injuries to his chest. The attackers apparently also urinated on his face. And then there's this. Quote, police said Scott Leader, 38, told them it was okay to assault the man because he was Hispanic and homeless. He allegedly told police, Donald Trump was right. All of these illegals need to be deported. Although there's absolutely no evidence that the man that they beat and then urinated on is here illegally. They just assumed because, well, he looks Mexican, so therefore Mexican equals illegal in the eyes of some people. And that, if you've looked at some of the immigration laws that have been passed recently in several states, for instance, there's the SB 270 that passed in Arizona back in like 2010, and there was something that was being proposed in a town in Virginia. I forget exactly what the town was, but there was a documentary made about this particular town called 9500 Liberty. And what happened there when like the local city council, I think they actually approved the thing and then wound up saying, oh, yeah, we're going to repeal this now because they saw what happened. So they were passing this, like you must identify law and telling police that if you suspect somebody is here illegally, you stop them, you ask for identification, something that proves that they're here within the confines of whatever laws are in place that are numerous and arduous, and there's absolutely no way that any member of the law enforcement can know all of them. But anyway, they said, like, you have to make sure that people are here illegally. Well, what happened was a bunch of people that were in the U.S. legally, but they fit the description, if you will, of someone that might be harassed. They decided to leave the city, and some of them left the county altogether. What wound up happening was grocery stores closed because grocery stores operate on very small overhead margins. And when you lose 10 to 20% of your customer base because they just leave the area, well, there's no way to recover from that quickly. So businesses went under because they lost a segment of their customer base because of these threats or possible threats of we're going to stop and harass you every time we see you because you fit the description of what we think is somebody that might be here illegally. And in this documentary, 9500 Liberty, they show part of this council meeting and the absurdity that was being spouted by some of the supporters of this. It was mind-blowing because there was one woman that got up and said, you have to remember who it was that did 9/11. It was illegals. And the next guy that got up to speak was, I believe, Pakistani or Indian. And he said, this woman's confusing 9/11 and 7/11. It was not people that were here illegally from Mexico. It was people that were from the Middle East that were here on visas. So this guy basically like schooled the haters, if you will, and said, like, you're coming up here and you're spouting nothing but lies and ad hominem attacks that are not true at all. And, well, like I said, ultimately it wound up, I believe, getting repealed after they saw what happened in just a matter of months after they adopted this. And people were like, screw it, I don't want to live here. But then you have this, where two guys in the name of Donald Trump assault a Hispanic man and then pee on him. They went full R. Kelly, if you will. You know what I'm talking about when I say full R. Kelly. Drip, drip, drip. I want to pee on you. Yeah, that's what they did. They urinated on the guy's face. And again, the one man allegedly told police, Donald Trump was right. All these illegals need to be deported. The article from Reason continues. It says, that is truly awful, but it does not indict Donald Trump. However inflammatory his anti-immigrant language might be, and recall that during the press conference which he announced his presidency, he said that Mexican immigrants are bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, before admitting, quote, unquote, some, I assume, are good people. And that is really the hallmark of a racist or a bigot, right? Is they'll make this blanket statement of all of these fill-in-the-blank derogatory term are this, that, the other thing, but some of them are good. That is the hallmark of a bigot. It's the hallmark of a racist. The story continues. It says, but here's how Trump responded at a press conference after being told about the attack. Quote, I haven't heard about that. I think that would be a shame, but I haven't heard about that. I will say the people that are following me are very passionate. They love this country. They want this country to be great again, and they are very passionate. I will say that. Now, I don't know what makes a country great, but I can tell you what doesn't. Beating people because they don't look like you. That is not a country I want to live in. That is not what I would consider to be a great country. That is what I would consider to be, I don't know, Nazi freaking Germany. That's what happened in Nazi Germany, is people that didn't look like the Germans were rounded up, some of them beaten before being rounded up, and I'm sure that there was probably at least one person that was Jewish that probably got peed on, because you're not talking about rational people. Like, rational people don't just go around and look for people that don't look like them to beat them up and say Donald Trump was right. We need to deport these guys. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to pee on you. There's more from this. As well as, if we get to it, how minimum wage destroys innovation when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake's security company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Coinbase has more than 1 million consumer wallets and is trusted by over 25,000 merchants, including Overstock.com, Khan Academy, Reddit, and of course, FPP. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Now, I'll get back to the article from Reason.com in just a moment. But first, I want to make sure that I tell you about Spend-A-Bit, my newest affiliate. And you need to know about Spend-A-Bit, especially if you advocate for free market money. If you promote Bitcoin as an alternative to the fiat-centric world, you need Spend-A-Bit in your arsenal. The search engine for things you can buy with Bitcoin. Spend-A-Bit aggregates millions of products from thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants. Keep your money in the free economy. Spend-A-Bit. Use my affiliate link, spendabit.fppradio.com. And if you're a Bitcoin-accepting merchant, ask about their merchant suite to reach even more customers. Spendabit.fppradio.com. That's spendabit.fppradio.com. The story here from Reason is about two Boston men that allegedly beat a Hispanic man, broke his nose, injured his chest, and then peed on his face. And they did all of this in the name of the Donald. Quote, allegedly told to police by one of the two men, Donald Trump was right. All these illegals need to be deported. End quote. Donald Trump responds, I haven't heard about it. It would be a shame, but I haven't heard about it. I would say that people that are following me are very passionate. They love this country. They want this country to be great again, and they are very passionate. I will say that. Well, the article from Reason says nothing says national greatness like urinating in a homeless man's face, except maybe breaking his nose. Trump is not responsible for the actions of the Leader brothers, but his response and his general deportment during this bizarre press conference leaves much to be desired. I'm guessing that virtually every conservative who is tripping balls over Trump blew his stack when Obama saluted with latte in hand or otherwise demeaned the office of the presidency because, you know, propriety is a conservative value, unless it gets in the way of someone you kind of like who is really doing well in the polls and will make America great again while bullying people and showing zero empathy for people who have no right to be in this country in the first place. Right? And then they have a video that they says is of the Trump press conference in which he also engages questions about Heidi Klum and Megyn Kelly and tells people to trust him on women's issues because he will be great. And the relative paucity of failure in his life. And then they mention where in the video the questions begin. I will post the link to this in the show notes. You can watch the video if you so choose to watch video of the Donald talking about how great the Donald is. And I don't know if he says, Obama, you're fired in the video or not, because I've not watched it and I don't really have any desire to watch video of Donald Trump because I know that he's basically a blowhard. And again, like he says, you know, like, make America great again. But he doesn't want to make America great. He wants to, like, make it his version of great that's not going to be so great because it's not going to have immigrants, and immigrants bring innovation and small business. And you know, immigrants are entrepreneurs at a much higher rate than native-born Americans. And when I use the term native-born, I'm not using it to mean, you know, like go back 400 years and the people that were here first. I'm using it like people that were born in the U.S., regardless of where their parents came from. People that were born within the United States are considered native born for the purpose of these various statistics that I've seen. And it's the immigrants, people that move here from elsewhere, that start businesses at a much higher rate than people that are born here. Now, that's not to say that people that are born here can't inherit a business and then wind up, continuing that business and having that business thrive or flourish or, be even bigger than what they inherited. It's just stating that people that move here start businesses at a higher rate than people that were born here. And one of the things about starting a small business is you do want that business to expand. And one of the ways that you do that is through innovation. And one of the ways that you're able to innovate is by bringing on new employees that have new ideas. However, the minimum wage laws discourage innovation. They also discourage entrepreneurship. The article here comes from FEE. That's the Foundation for Economic Education. In a letter to the Wall Street Journal recently, Brian Collins asked, "Do you truly believe that absent an increase in the minimum wage, that Wendy's or any other business will suspend efforts to develop and implement new forms of automation that promise to reduce staff levels?" The answer is no. Contrary to Mr. Collins' implication, however, this fact does nothing to excuse raising the minimum wage. Even in a world in which market forces naturally promote automation, raising the minimum wage has two pernicious effects. First, it causes the rate of automation to be faster than it would be if the minimum wage were not raised. That is, raising the minimum wage results in automation being introduced at a rate that is too fast given the size of the low-skilled labor force. Secondly, raising the minimum wage destroys incentives for entrepreneurs and businesses to find ways to profitably employ workers whose limited skills prevent them from producing hourly outputs valued at least as high as the minimum wage. The first effect throws some low-skilled workers out of jobs that they would otherwise retain, while the second effect ensures that no one has incentives to find ways to profitably employ these and other low-skilled workers. And this is something that a lot of people, it's what you call the unseen. So, part of this is unseen, right? So part of it you can actually see to where, okay, we're raising the minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $10 per hour. What you're able to see, what is the scene, is that everybody making between $7.25 and $10 an hour gets an automatic raise to $10 an hour. That is definitely seen. What is also seen is the number of people that wind up losing their jobs because the employer says, listen, I've only got, let's say, $50 set aside to cover payroll. Right now I'm able to hire 6.5 full-time employees, $7.25, so $7 would be 7 full-time employees, but, there's that extra quarter, so it would wind up being like 6.5 full-time employees. Well, minimum wage is now $10 an hour, so I can only hire 5 full-time employees. Either everybody gets their hours cut, or a couple of people lose their jobs. That is also seen. And I'll talk about some of the unseen, as well as finishing the article here when we continue on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online, fppradio.com.
Why do they hate us? Is libertarianism compatible with Islam? Davi Barker answers these questions and more in Voluntary Islam and Other Essays. He advances the voluntarist cause with analysis of the confluence of values between Islam and libertarianism, as well as contemporary movements from the Tea Party to the Arab Spring. Voluntary Islam by Davi Barker is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
The unseen of raising the minimum wage. And, you know, some people would actually say that the laying off of workers is unseen because you don't really know why the workers were laid off. You can assume that it was because of the rising wages. But something else that you see is rising cost of products. And a lot of times, you know, employers will do a combination where they'll slightly raise the prices and then they lay off a couple people. And then you have fewer people doing the same amount of work. And, yeah, sure, they're making a little bit more in their take-home pay, but the cost of everything has gone up. So they're not really any further ahead. That's part of the unseen. Even though people see it, they don't realize that I'm not any further ahead. And then a couple years down the road, you have people again saying, we need to raise the minimum wage. I remember when I was in like junior high, and the minimum wage was somewhere in the neighborhood of like $3.50 or something. And they were talking about, you know, we need to raise the minimum wage up to $5, and that'll like solve everything. And then, you know, a couple years later, we need to raise the minimum wage from $5 to $7.25, and that will solve everything. And now they're saying somewhere between like 10 to 15. And what I find kind of ironic about the whole move for $15 an hour minimum wage is some of the advocates are not actually paying their staff $15 an hour. So it recently came out that Bernie Sanders, who's advocating the $15 an hour, is paying some of his staffers, intern people, like $12 an hour. The Socialist, I think it was the Socialist Workers Party in Seattle, they had a job that they were advertising where they were offering to pay somebody $12 an hour to work on the Fight for 15 campaign. So, like, it's very obvious that these people aren't actually practicing what they believe, while, you know, like, saying anybody that opposes us is inhumane and they hate people and why do you hate poor people? But it's actually inhumane to prevent someone from taking a job for a rate they're willing to work for. What do I mean? Well, I'll use the language here from Fee because they explain it probably better than I could. Although, you know, like there are times when I can explain things very well, but, you know, like I've got it written out in front of me. I might as well read what's here. If it is inhumane, they write, to outlaw the profitable employment of those workers whose skills are the least valuable, then the minimum wage is deeply inhumane. If the government instituted a minimum wage of $100 per hour, and therefore made unlawful the profitable employment of all those people whose skills are too meager to enable them to produce at least $100 worth of output per hour, there would be national national uproar, and rightly so. Yet, when the government implements such a policy, but in a way that outlaws the profitable employment only of the people whose skill sets are among the lowest, relatively few people object, and many people, especially so-called progressives, applaud the policy as humane. How sad, and how especially sad that many economists today, who above all should know better, lend their authority to such an inhumane policy. And, it really is sad that people think, well, everybody has a right to a living wage. And, well, that sort of brings up the question of what exactly are rights. Because there's what they call negative rights, and then there are what they call positive rights. And this is something that gets awfully murky when talking to people, and people use the term, and some people that use the term right will be talking about negative rights. Some people that use the term rights talk about things as positive rights. A negative right is a right that you have that no one has a legitimate right to take away from you. For instance, the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is a negative right, that there is no obligation on anyone to provide you things to continue your life. No one is under any obligation to provide you things to make sure that you're free and able to do what you want. And there's no obligation for anyone to provide you things that help you pursue happiness. Negative right. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. The right to bear arms is also considered a negative right, meaning that you have the right. No one has a legitimate right to prevent you from bearing arms to protect your life, your liberty, or your pursuit of happiness. But no one is under any obligation to provide you with arms. That, again, is a negative right. And I would contend that a living wage is a negative right. Like, that there's no one, and instead of using the term living wage, let me use the term employment. No one has a legitimate right to prevent you from performing labor in exchange for compensation. However, there are people that are claiming such a right by saying, no, you are not allowed to work for less than X per hour because the living wage is a human right, and they're claiming that the living wage is a positive human right, meaning that someone is obligated to give you such a thing. Now, I remember not too long ago seeing something on Facebook where somebody was using, I think it was the Anarchy Ball Facebook page, and they had this picture of the ANCOM, that's the anarcho-communist, and he said something about water being a right, and then the anarcho-capitalist ball said, like, water's not a right, something, blah, blah, blah. And so I left a comment, and I was like, well, technically they're both right. Because you do have a right, a negative right to water. No one has a legitimate right to prevent you from obtaining water. And the person that had posted it left a follow-up comment saying, well, that's not what this first guy meant. And my thought is, how do you know? Like, you're projecting what you think he means onto this. So there are times when people say, like, education is a right. And I agree. Education is a right. No one has a legitimate right to prevent you from learning anything that you want to learn. If you want to learn how to become a master welder, no one has a legitimate right to prevent you from learning how to be a master welder. If you want to learn Portuguese and Arabic, no one has a legitimate right to prevent you from learning Portuguese and Arabic. However, on the opposite hand, those things are not positive rights, meaning that no one is obligated to teach you Portuguese. No one is obligated to teach you Arabic. No one is obligated to teach you how to become a master welder. That is the difference between positive rights and negative rights. And it's something that people really need to be more clear on when they say something is a right. Hold on. Do you mean that no one can prevent me from doing this, or do you mean someone must provide it to me? Hey, don't forget, every Wednesday's the Ask Me Anything. Send those questions, AMA at FPPradio.com.